Today we're going to be talking a lot about carbon neutrality with one of the leading firms in the country and actually in the world, HKS, firm of 1,500 staff, 26 offices around the world, and number 3 on our building design and construction giants 400 list, doing something like $400 million in fees, architectural fees. And with us is one of the distinguished members of the firm, Rand Ekman. Rand's an old friend. He's a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. He's a lead fellow and actually one of the pioneers of the whole green building movement going back 20 years or so. So, Rand, welcome to Horizon TV.
Thank you, Rob. Happy to be here.
Great.
This will be fun.
Yeah, we're going to talk about what HKS is doing. You've made a lot of initiatives, starting actually going back to the AIA commitment in 2009. How's your commitment? What do you think of the progress overall on AIA commitment? How did you think your firm and other firms? What are you hearing?
The 2030 commitment that's sort of looking, using the lens to look at the projects we're designing for clients has been pretty darn important for shifting the way we think about design and the relationship to building performance and high-performing buildings. Mm-hmm. Focusing specifically on the topic of energy and now growing into carbon and embodied carbon, it's been sort of the seminal tool by which we can engage projects and all of our projects. So essentially our practice. It's been a key component for HKS. We have been, over the last, I think it's been a little over a decade since we've been involved with it. Yeah. And we've been trending upwards every year. My personal desire would be to trend upwards a little bit faster, but we are going in the right direction, which is good news. I came back last week from AIA convention. One of the topics of conversation at that time was a forum around the 2030 commitment, and then many firms are sort of plateauing. So I do think that is true. It is something that HKS is experiencing, and it needs another sort of jolt of energy to move us forward as quickly as we need.
Right. So there was a shift. I mean, you started in 2009. There was a shift early on from focus on energy, get the energy down, and now to decarbonization, which is really the focus we're trying to get on here. Well, that's interesting, and you'd like to see it move along a little faster. I'm sure there are many of your colleagues and peers out there who would feel the same. Now, you also, your firm, HKS, was also very instrumental in a program called Mindful Materials. I think you were one of the founders or the founder of it. And where does Mindful Materials stand? It's about almost 10 years old now. Where are we on Mindful Materials?
Yeah, so Mindful Materials over the last year or so has really stepped up its engagement with the profession. We've shifted into a not-for-profit status, which has given us the ability to sort of move faster and tap into funding sources that we weren't able to tap into previously. Okay. So we are aligning with the AIA's material pledge that is looking at climate health, ecosystem health, human health, circular economy, and social health and equity issues, and filtering material information through those various lenses so that professionals can make more informed decisions about materials that they're selecting, and manufacturers can provide information that enables those decisions to happen. Right. Mindful Materials is moving fast in the right direction and convening the industry in a very thoughtful way.
Good, great. That sounds like good progress there. You've also signed on to the UN Global Compact, huge initiative. It's just a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. You've done that. What progress has HKS made, and what's your feeling about the UN Global Compact in terms of architectural design firms, contractors, engineering firms, and so forth being involved in it, and is it working?
So yes, it has been a key component to moving HKS forward. one of the things it's done is it's enabled us to work with a framework, the UN Global Compact, that is bigger than just the architecture and design profession. So I think there are, if I remember it correctly, sort of 20,000 global companies that are using the same framework. So it enables us to talk a language that our clients are already involved in. That was one of the things that I found very compelling by it. It enabled us to sort of engage in the ESG conversation that we were not having as robustly as many of our clients. So that felt like a very good platform to organize ourselves around, which we've done. It's been, I think we're working on our third communication on progress that should be complete at the end of this month. Like many things, it's a process of self-assessment and continuous improvement that looks holistically at not just issues of sustainability, but issues of, equity and other sort of social issues that are important to us and our clients.
Has there been any specific thing that you've done as a result of being part of the UN Global Compact that you feel has been a nice initiative or some progress that you've made, some tangible area of
Yeah.
it, if you will?
So it has brought together our sustainability, our public interest design, Citizen HKS, and our JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion leadership, are under one sort of broader mission, which is the Global Compact. So it's enabled us to sort of understand the connections between those three efforts that are already happening and have been happening. And that's allowed us to sort of address things at a leadership level, at a board level, that give us a little more attention. So those do have to do with things like carbon neutrality for the company, or JEDI related issues, diversity related issues, the creation of policies, and an internal look about how it is that we are comparing with like peers. The other thing that I think it's been useful for is I'm seeing much more interest from our clients in RFPs around our engagement around environmental social governance. So it enables us.
They want to see what you're doing. Yeah,
they totally do.
Yeah.
And having that sort of holistic approach and being able to describe that has been very valuable.
Yeah. Very good. I appreciate that. You've got a new thing going on that we just received some information about, this Cloverly partnership. You had a group called Verdis, Verdis Group, come in and do some internal look at what's going on at HKS, and now you've entered into a partnership with this Cloverly group. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah. So Rob, that's a focus on the carbon footprint of HKS as a business.
Itself, the firm itself, and
yes,
and everything associated with the firm. Yeah.
Yes. So it's not the projects that we deliver for our clients, but it's how we conduct our business, the business practices that we use, the energy and carbon that it takes to do what we do to deliver the work that we deliver to our clients. So commuting, transportation, energy use, heating, ventilation, lighting, all the things that it takes us to do what we do. Materials that we use in doing our work, the relationships that we have with consultants, all of that sort of gets pulled together to describe what all that and more, to describe what our carbon footprint is. So we've been working on understanding that for a few years, and we understood that we felt like we had a pretty good approach, but we wanted to make sure that we had an approach that was matching the global standards for assessment for carbon footprint. Verdis Group was the company that we tapped into to do an audit of our methodology. So that was very useful. They helped us adjust a few things, and to tap into some data sources that were a little more precise than we were already using, which was good. So, excuse me, they helped us to feel confident that the number and the methodology that we were using was a good methodology and a good number.
Yeah.
They also helped us to describe the criteria for addressing that number, addressing that carbon impact, and understanding the qualities of carbon offsets that we felt were good for us as a company. So that's a whole world that is really not my world, but it was very important to understand.
Yeah. There are some who kind of criticize carbon offsets as saying, well, you're not really doing the job, you're just buying your way out of the problem. I'm sure you've heard that argument many times over. Rand, tell me a little bit more about the carbon footprint assessment.
So a good question, Rob. It's one of those areas that is probably not new to many of our clients, but is new to the architectural profession. And the assessment of our carbon footprint as a company sort of means deploying a level of rigor around a set of data points that are sometimes a little tricky to get to. So there's scope 1, 2, and 3 that has to do with natural gas, electricity, and then scope 3 value chain questions, which gets us into business travel, commuting, capital goods, purchase goods and services, a whole host of things that engage parts of the company like travel and accounting and purchasing that isn't really tooled up the same way designers are to think about the topic of sustainability and carbon. So that's a very useful exercise to go through to develop sort of a cultural awareness of what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Once we know that, we then have to figure out what to do.
All right. One of the things you're claiming as a firm is that more than 3/4 of your portfolio is nature-based solutions, so 76%, and that and that 24% or a quarter is based on materials solutions with things like special timber called from Molven and carbon cure and so forth. What does a nature-based solution mean? What's the definition of that, Rand?
Yeah. So let me back up just a little bit, which is to say the portfolio that you're referring to is our carbon offset portfolio. It's not our building design portfolio. So we worked with Verdis Group to define the values that we felt were important as we sought carbon offsets. The arrangement that we have with Cloverly is a company. They're a sort of a market assessor for carbon offsets.
Right.
So one of the values that we elevated for assessment of carbon offsets that we wanted to invest in was that it was a nature-based solution. The reason that we like nature-based solutions, excuse me, there are two things there that you asked. One was about nature-based solutions, and one was about what I'll frame as industry adjacency, which is the sort of technologies that we deploy to build buildings, mass timber, concrete, those types of things.
Right.
Two different value systems that we worked with Cloverly to seek offsets that provided those. Nature-based solutions was one that we appreciated because they typically come with social programs, community development. They're global. Those types of offset programs tend to be global. They tend to be focused on reforestation programs or some sort of natural system engagement, which tends to involve community development programs. That's a value that we carry with our public interest design, and that was the reason that we were sort of focusing on nature-based solution. The other piece of it is industry adjacency, which is building technologies that we feel is our offset investment can help advance.
Is there
Did that help?
Yeah, is there a specific thing you've done, a specific nature-based solution that you've discovered or are using more energetically, if you will?
Well, no, not there are two. I think there are two programs, one in Indonesia, and well, might be more than two. There's one in Indonesia and there's one locally in North America that are focused on reforestation. The Indonesian program is focused on sort of community development and the community in which that resides within the forest as the caretaker for the forest. So there's job creation, skills development, as well as carbon offset advantages.
Right.
We've also invested in, I can't recall the name right now, but there's a program, I believe it's in Alabama, that is forestry related as well. That's a nature-based solution. It's less a developing environment, but it is focused on preserving forest, preserving and advancing forest land management where that would not necessarily occur had we were not buying the offsets.
Okay.
And I think there it's really focused more on land use, so reduction of sort of farm and more forestry practices.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. You've been in this game as a designer for a while, but you've also been, as I said, really been one of the pioneers in the so-called green building movement from 20 or more years ago. What advice do you have for your colleagues out there? What could you and what could HKS and what should other firms be doing better than we're doing right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'll answer that with two answers.
Okay.
Probably one is that I enjoy this work a great deal. I find it very meaningful, and I quite appreciate the way it helps to advance the relationship of architecture to the environmental impacts. I also realize that as much as I enjoy it, I don't. It's very complex, and there's a lot to understand. So one piece of advice that I have, particularly when we're moving towards becoming a carbon neutral firm, and the landscape of offsets and the methodology for assessment is pretty different than building design and the technical questions of what it takes to deliver a low energy or a zero carbon building. So leaning into partners like we have with Verdis and Cloverly is very important. It's a very complex world out there. Do not try to take it all on, because there are people who know a lot more than you do. I do, for sure.
Okay. So be a little humble.
Yeah. So that's one piece of advice. The other thing that I would like to see, and I know that the large firm roundtable is working on this question, is we're all moving as individual firms along this path. We will make progress faster and more effectively when we ally ourselves as a profession and move the profession forward. So that's another thing that I think HKS has moved forward because we've wanted to and needed to. I think we'll make cover a lot of ground faster when we do it together, which is another thing that I'd like to see sort of amp up. And the large firm roundtable is working on that question as a group right now. Right.
The large firm roundtable is a long established group of the biggest firms where the CEOs and principals come in and tackle complex issues, as you say. Yeah.
Right.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time here, Rand. It's been great talking to you about what's happening at HKS, but also your perspective on the architecture profession and its role in decarbonization and these related issues of ESG and all the wellness and all the good stuff that's going on these days. So thank you very much. I've been speaking with Rand Ekman. He's a fellow of the American Institute of Architects and a lead fellow as well. And he's the Chief Sustainability Officer of HKS Inc. Based in Chicago, but you guys are worldwide. So thanks for your time, Rand.
Thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure.